Anyways, let's continue where we left off. This time we're going to be talking about the Lanayru Desert.
The main thing I remember about the um, the first time was that it struck me how important it is to balance your stamina over the quicksand.
So the deal with the Lanayru Desert is, well, besides the 6 that you said, this is also where we see the introduction of the time shift stones. If you look at the number 1 where I marked in the map, this is the area where you have in the Lanayru Desert, after you go through that introductory section where you're introduced to the carts and the time shift stones. This is the one where you actually have to get access to it by throwing the bomb through the top of the hole in the cage. And then you have to beat up all the techno blends so you get the beetle upgrade. So more so than the prior two areas, this is the one where you get to see quite a lot of use of the flying beetle, but also in addition to the bombs, because you're going to be frequently flying it around, finding time shift stones to hit, or picking bombs up so you can blow things up so you can open the passage forward.
And there's also some of the enemies as well. It's quite easy to defeat them with the bombs. So things like the electro spumes. They're quite easy just to get rid of with bombs.
Yeah, bombs for those enemies explode on contact. It was an interesting thing that I noted when I was playing through the game. Also, in that there's actually a fairly wide open area when you first start out in this area, and that's where you are introduced to these ampulises. These big, kind of like crawfish looking enemies with their big conch shells, or not conch shells, but big shells that they like to sonic spin roll into you. But you also have these like 4 pillars that you can use to sort of block them off and have them ram into so you can get your chance to attack at them, because otherwise it's actually pretty hard when you don't have any when you don't have any walls to cover for you.
Yeah, it's nice and organic how there's just like a certain enemy type, and there's the pillars there, or the little raised platforms, and just by virtue of the fact of you walking through that environment, you'll prompt the, so what are they called, the amethysts?
Ampulus.
Ampulus. So just by walking through the environment, you'll prompt the Ampulus to attack you, and when they track you, they kind of move in a circular motion, but they curve around, and because of that arc, they're more, as they're following you, as they're tracking you, you can lead them to hit the walls, or if not, you can just shield and defend as well. But I just like how sort of just the natural setup of the environment may facilitate interactions where the player understands how they can engage with that enemy.
And because they're an electric enemy, they're an enemy that encourages you to use either the shield bash or the dash, because you'll find that it's actually pretty hard to sidestep out of the way, so you have to go full speed in order to really get away from these enemies once they start rolling at you, because they are pretty sharp turners.
There is a bit of a electricity theme in this area overall, isn't there? Because there's the technoblins who have their electrical rods. There's the electro spumes, and there's the electro choo-choos, and also later on to activate the 3-tiered spherical key to get into the mining facility, you need to use the electrical Ampulus eggs and move them into these little holes, which will give you access to the 3 generators. And so you find those generators, you stick your sword in, and then you basically flick them on. So you've got, and then once the 3 generators are turned on, then you can open them, open the main key, And so yeah, so there's it's a desert but with a electrical theme to it.
Maybe this is kind of a shallow comparison, but just between the aesthetics and the idea of a small puzzle room kind of on its own locked away, the three electrical generator things reminded me of the shrines from Breath of the Wild.
Oh,
Hmm.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
Just going back to the first area. Well, this area overall, actually, the center point, like each three areas, each of the three areas has a different like a tool object, which helps the player, which helps to orientate the player in the environment. And so Farron Woods has the Great Tree, Elden Volcano has the volcano, and Lanayru Desert has that giant circular structure, the entrance to the mining facility. And unlike Farron Woods and Elden Volcano, when you actually enter the desert, you enter from a raised area and you have a good, I mean, not a very wide view because of the draw, because of the limited draw distance in this game and the fact that objects further away are really blurred out of existence because of the art style. But unlike the other two areas, you do start off with a greater. You sort of enter slightly from above so that you can easily see the walls on the left and the right, which are a significant element in this environment. And so then, as the player walks through, they can sort of figure they get a sense for how this environment is organized. Whereas I feel in the other two environments, it's like you're always sort of your head's always sort of buried in the sand, or it's in the sort of like you can't see the trees from the forest.
Yeah. The trees will little be in the way, or just the tall structure of the volcano in the elder volcano would be, won't give you that much room to see over unless you're already in an elevated area. Whereas because the way Lanayru Desert is, where it's generally pretty flat, minus those walls,
Mm.
um, you can just get a pretty good vantage point as long as you get on top of one of them, or even just on the regular ground. So yeah, that's actually an interesting point.
Correct me if I'm misremembering, but if you look towards the temple, even if you're in the giant main area, you can still see the big old gate that you're gonna see up closer later.
In addition to what you said before, Adrian, it's the time shift zones are sort of, I guess, tutorialized through the linear section before the player enters this large um, desert room. So so the player has some knowledge of it before they approach,
Yeah. That's not to
and
say
then
the main area, the Lanayru Desert itself, doesn't also start out linear because, as you can see from the map, the challenges, you start off from the bottom, you work your way to the west, and you basically go in a counter or no, a clockwise circle.
yeah, that's right. Once you get the
Hmm.
beetle upgrade as well, like you have different ways of interacting with the environment. So you can you can pick up the bombs and drop them off in the sort of, I'm not sure how to describe them, but let's say the sort of basketball rings
Yeah.
that are attached to the walls. And you can also use it to attack the I'm just going to check Ampelus, right? Yeah, yeah. So you can also attack them from a distance before you actually engage them and prompt them to dash over, and that's useful in the next section where there's all the quicksand.
Hmm. Yeah. Speaking, I don't know why I wrote them as the basketball rings. I wrote them as coffins for whatever reason. But yeah, one of the.
The well, so I mean, the top looks like a basketball hoop, and then the shape of the door, it has that hexagonal shape, like a coffin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's got
Like
the sort
Dracula's
of
gonna pop out.
yeah, it's got the tapering of a coffin, doesn't it?
Hmm. Yeah. So I kept writing
Mm,
them down
kind
as
of, yeah.
coffins. Where I wrote the number two in the map, near the southern area, that's where you actually have to use. That's the first time you use the hook beetle to drop bombs into the coffins, so you can get across the sink sand. Of course, you also got to watch out for the spume that's in there. And then in the southwest, that's where you get these two different sink sand areas. The main thing with the first one, I should say it this way: you see a progression where you start off with using the Ampelus so that you can get across the sink sand, and that one's actually interesting. When the Ampelus dies, its shell actually stays behind, and you can use it as a platform to get across. Otherwise, the distance is typically too great for you to dash across without you running out of stamina and sinking. In that second of the area, what they do is they actually make it a river this time, so you have to kill the Ampelus while it's at a distance, and its shell will come across, and now you have a moving platform in order to run across. So that's the escalation of the idea there. Where first you start off in like a static one, and then you start off in a moving sand river that you have to make your way across.
And then I guess, and then I guess the next development of this quicksand idea is that once you enter the Temple of Time area on the on the west, then you once you come back out into the desert area, so where six is, um, Fee, your companion, will tell you that you can walk on the areas that connect with the sort of the spokes of this dial.
Hmm.
So there's that sort of that center circular area, which is the entrance to the mining facility, and that's ultimately your goal. Um, and then there are several spokes that come off in different directions, and some of those spokes are incomplete. And so the idea is you use the visual information of the map, and
Hmm.
then Fee encourages you to place waypoint markers at each of the junctures so that you can then use those to orientate you so that you move across the quicksand.
Hmm.
And so there's that sort of hidden element, which I guess is another form of development of this idea.
So I had a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, during the Silent Realm, you don't have access to the waypoints, right? Because you just don't have that option on the map screen.
Um, yeah, it seems as though they can place waypoints, although it doesn't show it in the video, but you can see the cursor with the
Oh,
waypoint is there. So it's still syncing and you can still place waypoints.
huh, crazy.
I remember playing it. I thought that I just had to have remembered where all the sink sand, like basically where all the spokes were broken.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing this for the first time and I noticed I was sort of in the northeastern corner and I'd entered that area before I went clockwise around the southwestern um, edge. And so I was walking on the quicksand, and I noticed that in some areas, like there was quicksand, and then in some other areas there wasn't, and I was really confused. And I spent like an hour like trying to figure it out, and yeah, I wasted so much time. And then later, like Fee will explain it to you. So I do find the quicksand a bit frustrating, actually.
I like it.
But getting on to back to the main map before we head back to talking about the Silent Room again and how the challenges have changed. There's actually a whole section with the Temple of Time, and that's a continued escalation of the time shift stone challenges. And inside the minecart, where you go in, you fight a bunch of enemies. There's that one tree in the middle where you have to, as you're going in, shoot it from the side, and of course also you be using the flying beetle in order to activate them ahead of time. And I remember once you get to the other side, you actually find out that you can't get into the Temple of Time, and I don't think you ever go into the Temple of Time.
The Temple of Time is in the Faron Woods.
What?
I thought that was where Impa was.
No. It's
What is that
in
called?
it's that one. I think is just the sealed grounds and the sealed temple.
Well,
Well,
you can at least understand why I would confuse the two names there.
yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought Temple of Time is usually in a forest, not a desert, but they called it the Temple of Time in this game.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't think you ever go in there. That or I never came back to check if you go in there.
I mean, once you finish the mining facility, you enter in from around the other side of the wall, but there's a cutscene, and
Oh yeah, that's what happens.
yeah,
Impa calls you a loser.
So yeah. Oh, the neat thing though is when you find out that the walls busted down is how you have to find the other time shift stone. It's obviously it's just hidden under a rock on top of those little pillars there, but it's a neat thing. Oh, and another note to make is I made a note of all the bomb flower locations because you can actually do quite a lot of these without ever using any bombs of your own, and also just because there's uh, a unique difference between throwing your own bomb and using a hook beetle on it and using one from a bomb flower. And one is that if you grab one from a bomb flower, there's no timer and it'll detonate on impact. So the only timer left there is the one on your beetle and not the one from the bomb.
yeah, that's cool.
Of course, I would naturally use opportunities when I could to throw my own bomb and get a beetle out on it anyways. It's fun messing around with that combo.
It's also a very elegant solution because if you think about it, in Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, the bombs were like flowers, and so but the problem is if they did the same thing in Skyward Sword, and actually they do the same thing in Skyward Sword, I think, like the bombs are flowers. But what's good about having the cactuses with the bombs on top, is that the cactuses are raised vertically, and so that means that you don't have to run the beetle along the ground, where you're
Hmm.
more likely to hit the ground and then cause it to stop moving.
Yep.
So it's quite an elegant solution,
Hmm.
and it fits in thematically as well. Oh, and of course you can the cactus are really fun to interact with because they will spring back and they will sort of they'll respond realistically to the way in which you hit them. So if you hit them at a certain angle, they'll bounce back at that angle.
Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
Oh, and you can see I made notes of the other enemies in this area. Of course, you begin facing more technoblins, and not exactly in a confined space, but one where they're more likely to gang up on you, and you don't have the cages to get in the way of the fight. Yeah, you also have quite a few more Octoroks in this area, in the Temple of Time area. I mean, yeah, for whatever reason,
Mm.
they're all gathered in this one area of the map. That's interesting. I kind of uh, dashed through the Temple of Time section, but I mean, it's clear what the de-escalation of the challenges are. Once you get to back into the main area where you're sort of in the northwest corner, uh, where another way that they step it up is actually they have the rocks over sink sand, and where you have to use the beacons to see where the ground is in order to better deal with them. Otherwise, you're just running in this slow sand while the rock is flying over, ready to drop rocks on you. You actually capture these rocks earlier, but it's on regular ground before you enter those two major sink sand Ampelas sections. But here's where I want to note the yeah, the progression of the challenges. So even though the area is open, there are areas where it's harder to deal with the enemies than in others.
There's also the fact that I mean, so a similar thing to what you're saying is that the bombable wall for the first, well, not the first, but for one of the time shift zones on the so directly west of the central structure.
Hmm.
Um, so there's that's similar to earlier on. Actually, that's similar to the area just sort of south. Actually, no, there's numbers here. So, okay. So the bombable wall area to the east, to the west of the central structure is similar to the bombable wall part at number 2 on your map. But the difference is that the second time uh, you're standing on the quicksand, on the safe area of the quicksand. So I guess you could say it's kind of development in the sense of you're not operating from solid from regular land, but you have to also keep the your location in respects to the safe areas on the quicksand.
Hmm. That's the major thing that they try to get you to understand with that west one. The bombable on the top in the north area, I think that one actually is a regular. I think that one's actually a regular crack. The ones in the west, if I recall correctly, they're actually the coffins, but you look at them and you're like, oh, how am I supposed to get there? Because you look at the map, it's like there's no bomb flowers nearby. How am I supposed to blow them up? And that's when you're actually supposed to just, actually run your ass over there, because
Yeah,
there's
drop a
actually
bomb.
solid ground and throw them in. And obviously watch out for the
Well,
rock.
actually, yeah,
But
there is a bomb just yeah, so
oh,
just
yeah,
just
there
near
is one.
there, there's a bomb which is surrounded by some grass.
Yeah, I miss
Yeah,
saw that. Yeah, there is actually a bomb flower there. Never mind. But you still have to make your way to it because you actually have
yeah,
to
that's right.
get to the switch. So that's the only one that doesn't actually take you to the room. The ones in the north and the east, those actually do take you to rooms where you do the challenges that you brought up earlier, where you use the Amplis egg and take it to the sort of little generator. Another note about once you get to that northwest area is this is actually where the map opens up. You can actually do these three in any order you want. And you can pretty much access all the other. Well, you can't. You have to make sure that you unlock the shortcut. So you want to continue going around the circle and unlock that shortcut way in the bottom right there, where I labeled it shortcut. Just because if you don't open that door and you somehow make your way to that earlier area, you're gonna have a bad time because you're gonna have to literally make your way all the way around again. So make sure you open that, but otherwise, once you open that shortcut, you can pretty much go anywhere you want in this area, no hassle.
I think it's neat how just like all the other areas in the game, there's there are certain game elements which allow you to navigate the area much more effectively on, when you return to it later on.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them is the mine carts, and also the on the eastern side, so on the eastern wall, there's a switch on the other side which will open up the gate. So
Yeah.
it'll like raise the bars. So there's yeah, so in total there's the mine carts. So when you push the mine cart down, they act as like a ladder. There's the hookshot targets, which you can't use just yet, and they allow you to get access to the top of the walls
Mm-hmm.
without having to um, access them from through one particular route. And then there's what else is there? Oh yeah, and then there's just knowing the outline itself. So once you actually know, how you're meant to navigate that area, then you can navigate it more easy, navigate it more easily. And then the time shift stones also change the environment a bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's um, so this environment does change as you move through it,
Yeah.
and it changes both in terms of how you transform the environment and also how um, later abilities that you get enable you to interact with the game with different game elements. So it changes physically and also changes through the abilities that the player has.
Hmm.
The walls in particular, I think are neat to think about just because, if I recall correctly, the main way of getting up on a wall is you have to walk around until you find a corner that's crumbled off, and then you can run up it. Aside from that, you can reach it from another wall, or you can jump off of. I think you can jump off of some of the cages, right, onto the walls.
Um, I think in the three cages down there, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
go. Actually, I think you run up into the cage, or I'm sorry, run up the wall so you can actually jump onto the cage, so you can throw it into the last spot. Or no, that's not how it works. I don't know.
Well, so regardless, like getting up on top of a wall has some measure of complexity to it, right? Whereas using a hookshot target is more of an immediate cause and effect,
Hmm.
where you see a target, you're going to get up on the wall right there, as opposed to uh, having to think several steps down the line when you'll be up on the wall.
Yeah, and that definitely comes into play with the silent realms, where it really matters knowing where those, or running around to look for those spots where you can run up those slopes to get on top of the wall, because they're not normally scalable, even with the dash. There's like two major notes that I wanted to make left. Oh yeah, one was that another escalation of challenges where you have rocks and spumes put together in the area where I put the number 7, and the last one where is the number 8, and this is where you see the Ampelus in a much more open area with much less cover to work with.
Mm.
So yeah, the more difficult variation of the Ampelus is actually literally right next to the first one, but it's only after you've already gone through the entire desert.
And then within uh, the eastern hall and also the northern hall behind the bombable wall, there are other Ampelus quicksand challenges, which are similar to number 3 and 4 on the map. So that's the area on the southwest side of the desert. Except the interior challenges are a bit more difficult. I'm not sure if it's actually both of those areas have those particular challenges, but the eastern one certainly does.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear that?
No,
Uh,
if there's something in the background, I can't tell.
Okay, thank God. No, the neighbor's dog is barking up a storm. I lost my train of thought. Daniel, what were you talking about?
yes, I was saying that the two interior areas develop the Ampelus quicksand challenges where you attack the Ampelus and then you ride its shell,
Mm-hmm.
following the conveyor of quicksand.
Yeah, that's the power room where you have to shift time and use the Amplis, but with the moving sync. Yeah, with the moving sync sand. So you use the Amplis shell before you shift the time, and then use the beetle to take it across. That was a cool one.
Yeah, again, I sort of feel, and I don't have anything to back this up, but I just remember spending way too long on those two rooms, and it felt really drawn out having to switch between states, and the quicksand traversal just feels drawn out to me. So I didn't really enjoy this section as much as I could have.
I guess now I will take the opportunity to note what the enemy changes are when you come back for the second and third time. For the second time, this is an interesting one. One is that there's a lot more moblins and bokoblins when you come back. So conspicuously, they're mostly absent when you're here the first time. When you come back the second, now they're in position. You have moblins a lot of times on these tall walls that are they're only like a little bit wider than they are. So, but that also encourages you more to, run over them and attack since it's not as easy to get around them.
About moblins, I feel like they have a very distinctive introduction in Farron Woods in that giant tree, and then there's a really memorable placement in that one room in the final temple where you're on the thin hallway and there's bottomless pits on either side. I feel like moblins are really frequently paired with really thin passages.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. There's like the one in Farron Woods that's actually in an open area, and then of course in like the final horde challenges where you get to fight one on like regular open ground. But yeah, they put them on these like thinnish walkways. The thing with this one, when you come here the second time, is there's not as much a consequence if they knock you off because there's just the sand underneath you. Although you do have to like quickly run to safety. It's not quite like the inside the tree one where you just fall. You just fall and start over.
Just to clarify, so you guys are talking about the ones with the wooden shields and the nipple rings, right?
Actually, I think I gotta see
Some of them
this
have
map
metal
carefully.
shields.
I think the ones here they all have metal shields.
Yeah, the wooden shields are not.
I mean, I'm talking about the giant ones.
Yeah, sometimes they're metal. Basically,
Oh, okay,
sometimes
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
cut the shield. You can't cut the shield.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the ones here all have metal shields.
Also, I thought it was clever how, with the keys, how the to unlock the door, you have so each of those three generators have a respective element, like a water, fire, electricity. And when you then activate the key, it's like in a like a circular dial challenge, which I think is similar to something they did in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, but I can't. Yeah, where you put in the Samus puts in her hand cannon into the key slot, and then you rotate the Wiimote. It's a similar thing here, but the what I find really interesting is how they each of each of those generators has an element, and and there are notches on the dial which are set up in respects to I guess you'd say, the relative direction of the compass directions of those generators. And so when you get to so once you've activated all the generators, you need to stick the sword in and then turn the dial according to where that respective element's generator is positioned in the environment. And that's really quite clever because this whole second half of the desert is all about that. Well, actually, the whole thing is all about that kind of circle and spoke structure, and through the platforms under the quicksand and through this lock and key puzzle, they really managed to find a very unique way to connect the sort of the overhead view of the environment with with the events that are happening at the ground level.
That's a connection I made without even realizing it. That you take the upright circle in front of you, and in your head, like translate it 90 degrees so that then it's flat on the ground, and you're sort of imagining comparisons between this thing standing upright in front of you and the ground beneath you, even though they're running, like even though they're at right angles against each other.
I wonder what the tuning process for this map was like. Like, I just imagine that they had like this whole thing filled in, right? Like, all of the, so as it is on your map, Adrian, all of the sort of outlines filled in, and then they just airbrushed away the walls until they got to a point where they could say, okay, that looks reasonably organic, reasonably natural. Yep, that's subtle enough. Like, at what point did they, yeah, like at what point did they say, well, that's subtle enough, and what point was it like too much? Like, and maybe there's a thing where, like, at the start, like in the first few areas, like the walls are more solid. So in the sort of southern area, like the walls are pretty much all filled in, and then on the northern side, there's more gaps. So maybe there's like a really sort of subtle visual message in that when you first enter the area, you can see you can see the spokes being more complete, and then when you get to the second area, the fact that they're not complete is a point of contrast, and therefore your mind's eye is naturally drawn to that. Hence, the reason why you deduce that, why you've deduced that naturally, Greg.
Before getting on to the Silent Realm, one of the weird things that actually happens in the enemy change-up when you go to the Lanayru Desert the second and third time is the spumes. All the spumes that you see here the first time, yeah, they're all gone. So for whatever reason, the one enemy they decided to remove were all the electric spumes. Why they did that, I don't know. Maybe there's a weird enemy limit that they couldn't overstep, so they decided this is the one we had the fewest of, so we might as well just get rid of it. Or I have no idea why.
Well, I guess because maybe they're not relevant because the player doesn't need to cross the quicksand as much because they've got all the shortcuts. But as to why they remove them, don't know.
Now for the Silent Realm, I think. Hang on, I just wanted to kind of like take a minute to rewatch it, just so I can get all my thoughts ready. Yeah, so let's just like prep ourselves and just like watch. It's only going to be like 4 minutes, and then we'll get back and give all our thoughts on the Silent Realm. Okay?
It's interesting, like how they only use a very limited area. Like they use the space direct, like quite close to where Link enters the Silent Realm, and they're sort of like, so I guess sort of the challenge to the north of the central circle. There are a series of individual challenges, and then in the south, you've got the sort of the initial area when the player first enters. Instead of the I forgot the name there, Ampelus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the Ampelus, you've got those sort of lantern carrying enemies,
Yeah.
and so they've remapped that challenge in a clever way because initially let's call them pillars. Initially those pillars were a way of showing the player how the Ampelus works, and now this second time they've been repurposed so that they sort of present different routes and different ways of moving through that space while not being or not stepping into the lantern's light. It's just so subtle, and I think that's one of the really interesting things about this game is that they sort of show how you can just reuse a single environment effectively just by having the right game elements in place. And so, both of the enemies, they both draw out, like they both make this environment much more interesting. I think it speaks to the complexity that comes out of just arranging enemies of particular behaviors in a space. I know that's a really like simple point, but it speaks to why this game is able to facilitate such sort of higher level design where your previous understandings, like your previous models, like previous mental models of the environment is constantly challenged in unique and interesting ways.
Hmm.
And that all comes from the way relatively open, simple spatial setups are paired with enemies.
I think that it also has to do a lot with just the nature of the Silent Realm challenge itself, where they give you this area that you should already be familiar with and put that time limit on it, where your only way to gain more time is to find more of the tears of light.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a test. It's a test, isn't it? Like it's a because as you say, because there's a timer. Because there's a timer, and because the enemies relate to that timer, then yeah, then and because you already know this environment, like the timer makes this a test of your previous understanding of the environment, to which the everything that you've done before, including like placing down the markers and everything like that, helps you to be able to navigate this area. So like, yeah, it's just so beautiful how like one initial experience then ripples forward and then affects how you then re-engage with that environment.
Hmm.
Sorry, I've stressed that point a lot, but I think it's really important.
Yeah. Should also be stated how not simple this is, otherwise you'd see a lot more games doing it. And
Yeah.
another way is how they're able to maintain the clarity of the challenge. It's not just about sticking different enemies in the same area. It's also about getting a new challenges out of it. So compare, having models on it to having watchers that are patrolling on top of those walls. That's something different. While you're trying to get all these tiers within a time limit, that's a different challenge. And of course, the comparison you made earlier with having, these amphilis in this wide open area where you have these couple pillars versus having a bunch of watchers, some of which stand still, some of which move, and some of which are more aggro to you once you get within a certain range of them, and then you have to make your way around them, or even multiple of them if you uh, run around them the right way. Wait, these are called Tears of Light, right? Well, who cares? One of the standout lights to me, there's one on top of Waking Water that you have to pull out a cart,
Yeah, yeah,
get on
yeah.
it, and then jump onto it. I thought that one was interesting.
I thought it was so contrived, man. I'm like, what is this?
It's the biggest change just to get you to do that one trick, but I don't know. It's
But but it's cool because once you get like, so if you're pushing it, so I mean, just like in this video here, I'm not sure if you're watching the same one, but
mhm.
like, so what happens is the players trying to time their pushes, uh, so it syncs up with the with I guess like the water
Mhm.
coming out and going back in, and then they get right to the end and they're just pushing it, and then underwater comes out, but because they've already pushed it far enough over, um, they can just even though they touch underwater and it goes into like red danger mode, the player can still just climb on top and still get the like are they close enough? So yeah, so I thought it was cute.
Another one, oh yeah, they put a cart in front of the cage where one of the time shift stones was. 'Cause the tier light is literally the one where the time shift stone is, but you have to push the cart in, go up, get on top of it, go in, and get it.
Mm-hmm.
or go on top and get it. Another one was on top, of course, on the ones on Temple of Time itself, because you can't actually get up there normally. So they put on these vine patches for you to climb up, and it gives you a really nice view of the whole area. If I was
Mm.
also to sort of explain the Waking Water one, it's because they really wanted that, but they couldn't find another area to put that in. But they had leeway to change up the area as they saw fit. So it's just like, all right, put a cart there, put a Waking Water there, because we really want this challenge in at some point.
There is there's the pulsing water in Farron Woods, and this is kind of the
Hmm.
same thing, just with a card on top.
Yeah, it's a challenge that it obviously involves a level element that was not normally there in the first time around, but put in just to get a new challenge to deal with the unique qualities of the Cyan Realm and the Waking Water.
And then once you finish, you get the claw shots, or the
Hmm.
double hook shots, which
Yeah,
then allows you to navigate the space again in another way. So,
I think this
mm,
is also the Silent Realm challenge that I think I like botched up at the very end. It's one where you definitely you can see where a lot of them are once you get onto the mining facility area and just look around. But it's also one where you got to be careful not to grab too many of the ones close by first. Yeah, the ones in once you get to that southern area and and those are your last ones, you have quite a way back to make yourself to the exit.
you can see because there's fewer large, like larger walls around you, whether they be trees or the volcano or the like all the sort of the structure or the caverns around the volcano. Like
Hmm.
this area is fairly open, as we were discussing before, which
Yeah,
makes it really easy to
it's
pick up your orientation points,
yeah,
your
open
waypoints.
without many things in the way to obstruct your line of sight, so you can see those vast distances unobscured. Oh, there's also that one cheeky one that's in the southern, like way down there, all by itself, and it's on a tree. It's neat
Yeah,
how any chance they can get to incorporate that roll mechanic to knock things off of stuff, because this is the last game where you're gonna see that roll.
yeah. Look, I although I found the quicksand kind of annoying, yeah, I do quite like the clever, as I said before, the clever top-down perspective, dial and spoke design, and how there's that connection there, and also the nature of picking up the bombs and dropping them in the hoops. I thought was quite enjoyable. And we didn't touch on it actually, but the that bird creature, which is has a very funny name, like Rock
Rock.
or something.
Yeah.
Rock. Yeah. Um, it's also quite fun to pick up a bomb and chase them as well. So
Yeah.
because they can be like quite a nuisance.
Hmm.
Like you'll be running across quicksand and then they'll attack you, and then if you take a hit on the quicksand and you get knocked back, then you basically have to repeat that section.
Yeah. Curious to note that in because they're without any cave walls, there are absolutely no electric keys in the Lanayru Desert area. So that's actually your only flying enemy, but it's also one that can, go quite a ways and actually, track you, which is what makes it the nuisance that it is. Some of my thoughts on the Lanayru Desert is definitely an interesting area, and I like the use, when you're going through the for the first time, the use of the hook beetle, its upgrade, the use of the bombs, so you get that clear escalation of challenges. And I like how they incorporate the use of the hook shot to make your way getting across. Well, actually, that more speaks to just like the game in general. Is like, boy, it's a little conspicuous how the hookshot was worked into the level, but somehow not the whip or the gust bellows, even though this is the area that you literally get it in. uh, anyways, gripes aside, um, the Lanayru Desert is also the one that features the fewest challenges in the same area because in the Fair Woods. Okay, actually, it's about tied with the Fair Woods, but the Lanayru Desert features more new areas that you go to. So, besides coming back here the second time and doing the Silent Realm challenges, that's actually about it. It was the Elden Volcano that featured the most, where you're doing that whole entire third stealth section again.
Yeah, I can't even remember what the environment upheaval was.
The third quest, I think, is that rail shooter section, right?
Yeah, that's where you're going to the Thunder Dragon. You go in the cart, and it has a time shift stone, so and you try to follow it while opening the path for it forward.
Yeah, I mean, this area also has a lot of interesting little subsections as well. So, I was just going to add as well. I just noticed just referring to that, the visual nature of the overhead map. It's also interesting that it does look a bit like a vault, and if you look at the way that the boxes are organized around that circular area, like it does look like a dial. Behind that is the mining facility, and so maybe vaults and mines are related in some way. I don't know, but it actually looks like the block of a vault, so that was really clever.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me. Well, listening to you two talk about your favorite elements, especially stuff like the hook attachment for the beetle, or the ampuluses, reminds me of why I like the sink sand so much, because it's sort of, I mean, I guess I would say it's a dynamic version of a bottomless pit where
Mm-hmm.
if you walk into it and you just stay there, Link sinks to the bottom and then you start back over. But you have another level of interaction with it where Link can run over it, and so it lends some ambiguity to getting through the environment where you need to gauge how far you need to go. Maybe you can run there, and then different elements interact with it differently. Like you can roll bombs across sink sand,
Yeah.
and obviously the ambulances surf across it. So I just like the sink sand because it's dynamic.
I get where you're coming from with the. Yeah, they did quite a lot of ideas in just this one area when you really think about it, which is probably why this is such a favorite. I mean, the time shift stones alone, that's already a cool idea. But then you got the sink sand, the use of the map with the sink sand as you're navigating across the map, so you can get to these three different areas, which involves more of the time shift stones and sink sands and the ampulises. I mean, those three right there are kind of key.
Initially, as I was playing through, I had this suspicion that in the center point of the map, there'd be like a giant time shift stone, and you'd whack it, and it would transform the whole desert into this green environment, and that never happened.
Oh,
Did you guys have the same idea as you're playing through, like the same expectation?
Isn't there some area left? Oh, that's the sand ship.
yeah, I did have a little bit of that because I mean, you literally get the entire map in the past, but it's unfortunate that you never actually get to go to it because sometimes you're just like, man, I kind of want to see what these little robot dudes are like in their actual
Mm.
time period without the normal limitations of the time shift stones. Um, but no, we never get to see that. That actually would have been kind of neat for like your third visit, where it's like really actually go to the past. But nah, just go to the Lanayru Gorge instead.
So I guess that's the end of the series of podcasts on Skyward Sword.
Yup. I guess just to say, I'll leave my usual thank you all for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
No problem.